Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Garzi, and as you can tell by the screen that's loaded up here, we're doing something a little different today. Instead of showing you guys a new crazy deck that I made or some awesome new interaction that I found, instead we're going to be looking at some new community created content. This is a new mechanic that was made by Taco G on the Stormbound Discord. I'm sure that some of you on there have talked with or know or at least seen Taco. Um, they are very, very talented at creating new cards. Uh, Super awesome person. And it made some super cool designs. And today we're going to be looking at one of those that they have conveniently put in a Google Doc for us to explain um, what the effect is, and then also some cards associated with it that use this new keyword. So without further ado, let's just hop right in. I'm just going to go straight down this Google Doc right here and just kind of highlight all the things that it says on here concerning the ability and the cards themselves. So to just go right into it, his key or their keyword is called army. And just to read this little paragraph right here, a unit with army can also be played as a buff to a friendly unit of the same race. That is on top of being able to just be played normally. A satyr with army can be played normally, or it can be played on top of a friendly satyr. This does not cause the unit to move as it would if the unit were played normally, and sometimes playing an army leads to special effects. So just a few quick notes about this. It seems to remind me a lot of, if any of you guys are Hearthstone players, it reminds me a lot of Magnetic in the sense that, well, in Hearthstone, a mech is able to be played onto a mech if the first one has Magnetic, which basically acts as a spell buff with new effects instead of as a separate minion. This works in pretty much the exact same way in that you're playing something as a spell instead of a normal unit. Sure, you're losing all of your movement when you play it, but you could be gaining some powerful effects, as we'll see down lower in this Google Doc. And there are a lot of interesting effects that can come with a unit being armied onto another. One other note about this, though, and another big limitation of it, which helps balance out the powerful effects of these army cards, is that you can only play an army unit on top of one of the same race. So in his example here, you can only play a satyr with army on top of a normal satyr, which has potential to be really tough. So you want to make sure that if you were to build a deck with army, then you would make sure to have a lot of cards of that same race in order to guarantee that you can get those armies consistently. So let's just hop into this first card right here. This is his second battalion. This is a neutral common, and keep in mind there's also a knight. Um, and its text, uh, well, before that, it costs 4 mana, has 1 movement, and it scales linearly in strength from 3 to 7 just based on the level of it. Now to get to that card text, it just says army. So this is very simple design, but it goes to show the base power level of what army is. So you're getting slightly less stats for your mana cost than what you normally would with 1 movement, but you're um, able to put that strength on top of an already existing unit just to make something even stronger. So as I say, it's very simple. It's a very elegant design. It just kind of goes to show what Army's able to do a little bit, to kind of almost to demo it and just to see the base power level of it. So to hop right into his second card, there are 5 here total that we'll be going through. So to hop into their second one real fast, this is the Treasure Seekers, also a common neutral unit. This one's a pirate, however. It costs 5 mana and has 1 movement as well. And similarly to the second battalion, it scales from 4 to 8 strength very linearly just based on level. And the text reads army, but then it also says if played as an army, you replace all 9 non-pirate cards from your hand. Now this is honestly probably my favorite of his army cards. It's a very interesting design um, because it's a decently powerful minion on its own, or a unit on its own. fairly understated for its mana cost, but still not horribly punishing to play. But you also keep in mind that you're able to army this, and when you do, you get a very powerful hand interaction effect. Um, it's very reminiscent of Gold Grubbers, as the card art almost implies, along with Snake Eyes, in that you could potentially be cycling off your entire hand and drawing a almost a completely new one in order to potentially get through your cycle faster to draw what you need. But it also does have that interesting limitation, like Gold Grubbers, where it only replaces non-pirates. So you could potentially only be replacing one or two cards, or you could just go for a full hand, just try to dump everything and get something new out of it. So in that sense, I'd say it's a very, very good design in that there's a lot of flexibility with it. But also, you have to keep in mind that there's a deck building restriction on this, because for army to work consistently, you want to have a lot of units of the same race as your army units. So in this case, you'll want to have a lot of pirates in your deck in order to consistently be able to have that pirate army effect going on whenever you need it to. But this card synergizes heavily with not having pirates so that you can potentially cycle your stuff even faster. So there's a duality of this card where you want to be able to get it off consistently, but you also want to be able to get its effect to have a lot of value, which again is a sign of a very good design because it poses a very interesting deck building challenge, which I thoroughly appreciate. And I'd say this is a very interesting card for sure. So now to get into their third card, sorry, this is a Shadowfen unit. So now we're getting away from the neutrals. This is the Black Bog Mind Flayers. This is a common Raven. It also costs 4 mana, similarly to the second battalion, but unlike that, it actually has 0 movement. But it also does scale from 3 to 7 strength based on the level. Um, so automatically, we're seeing here is actually fairly understated for its mana cost, especially without having the movement there. But that's made up for with its effect. And that text reads army, but then also if it's played as an army, you can convert a random weaker bordering enemy unit. Now that actually is insane if it works in the order in which I think it works. So to explain what I am assuming this does, is that in order, when you play this card as an army onto an already existing Raven, that is friendly Raven unit, it will give the buff to your unit. So let's just say you had a 7 strength out from a level 3 marked with prey. So you already have a 7 strength Raven out. You put, let's just say again, a level 3 Black Bog Mind Flayers onto it. So you have a 12 strength unit now hanging out there. I'm assuming that then the effect goes off, and it then converts a random weaker bordering enemy unit in comparison to that 12 strength that it has. That is absolutely insane. That has potential to be a ton of value generated from this one card just because it was put onto something with a decent amount of strength. I mean, that's objectively better than a Curse with Strings at the same levels, and it's considerably cheaper. So this has potential to be absolutely insanely strong. But you also need to consider that it has a lot of downsides when you're trying, or it has a lot of limitations when you're trying to set it up. First, you have to army this, so you have to have a friendly Raven already out onto the field in order to put this onto. Second, you need to have something that you want to convert next to an already existing Raven unit, because you can't get this conversion effect without armying this. So you need to make sure that you're putting this on something that's already in a position to be doing you a lot of good, and also is fairly understated for its strength, or for its cost, sorry, which has potential to be a downside. But oftentimes, or I would say almost all times, you'll be playing this as an army anyway, so you won't really be noticing that lack of movement or anything like that, by and large. So overall, it's a very interesting design that has potential to be absolutely insanely powerful, but has a strong downside of being hard to set up, which again is a sign of a very good design. So moving in to their fourth card here, this is the compatible Framebot. This is an Ironclad unit. It's a common construct. It costs 3 mana and has 1 strength all across the board. and 1 movement as well. Now, this is an interesting one to come in here because it does not have army. Rather, its strength reads that on death, if an army was played onto this, then spawn a 3 through 7 strength based on level construct on a random bordering tile. Now, this card may seem actually kind of underwhelming at first because, well, it is a 3 cost 1 movement with 1 strength. It's basically collector mirrors, but without the immediate effect of putting things into your deck and no scaling strength. So, just on that part, it's considerably weaker than an already existing card. But you have to keep in mind that if something's armored onto this, you have a now very sticky unit that it spawns a pretty decently sized construct when it dies. For 3 mana, I would love to pay. I would love to pay 3 mana to put a um, decently statted construct onto the field after my other now decently statted unit because it was armied. Uh, when that dies, I'd love to have that stickiness out. So this card has a very potentially powerful effect, but also again that downside of, well, it itself is actually pretty understated. So you need to have something else to army onto this in order to make it good, which has potential to be difficult because if you could potentially have this in your hand for a turn or two with no army cards to be able to put onto this. Um, so you're just kind of stuck with it. You don't necessarily want to be playing this because you won't be able to get its effect to go off without an army. And you don't necessarily want to just put it out and hope it doesn't die because your opponent could easily be dealing with this if they think that you have an army in hand. So it has that very distinct drawback, which, as I've said multiple times so far, is a sign of a good design of that. It has potential to be fairly strong, but also does have that obvious downside to it as well. That provides a very interesting deck building challenge. So now to get into Taco's last card here, this is the Green Bud Unifiers. Again with the common neutral unit, this one is also a construct, so it has potential to synergize with our previous card. This is a 4 mana, 0 movement, which does not scale linearly in strength. This goes from 2 to 3, then 3, 4, 4 strength here. And its text reads Army, but also on play, give 2, 2, 3, 3, and 4 strength based on the level to up to 2 random surrounding friendly units. That is very strong, especially when you consider that this card does not have to be armied unlike our previous cards in order to get that effect. This one is able to be played on its own, which is a very interesting and unique design from the other units that we've seen so far. No, this is a very interesting card because, like the card art suggests, it actually is very similar to personal servers, but has its own unique differences. Because you could play this in order to um, put this onto an already existing unit that's in a really good position to buff your other units. So you could potentially use this almost as a indirect kind of spell-esque support card to be giving strength out to a bunch of units. But this also has potential to just be played on its own in a new, more strategic location in order to still get that effect out. So for that reason, I'd say it's a very, very strong card in that aspect. But we also have to keep in mind just the fact that this is a construct. It synergizes with a card that we just saw before, where that card needed to have a card armied onto it. This card's able to do that, and since it's a construct, so that just provides a very interesting level of interaction between the set itself, of seeing these different cards being able to interact with each other in a way that makes both of their effects able to be used. Um, so overall, I think this is also a very interesting card. Um, Again, a very good design as well. As it would seem, all of these cards are. They're very well designed cards by Taco. They definitely did a very good job of expressing this new mechanic, this new gameplay principle into the game. I think that this is a very interesting unit set, a very interesting idea that I think would be very cool for the Stormbound devs to be able to implement maybe at some point, just because this is a very, very cool mechanic that definitely uh, deserves its deserves a spot in the limelight. Um, so that's uh, I think it's a very interesting design um, for that reason with all these super cool cards. So that brings a wrap to looking at these cards themselves. I hope you guys enjoyed this difference in the norm. Instead of looking at an actual deck in the game or going through some gameplay, instead looking at something that the community has made. I would personally love to be able to make more of these videos in order to show off things that you guys have done and some really cool designs. I do have one other new mechanic lined up right now that I will be able to make a video on in the future, but I would love to be able to receive some more stuff from you all. Um, some new mechanics or some new card sets or even just a card or two that you'd like me to show off. If you guys have anything of the sort, please contact me through the Stormbound uh, Discord or my personal Discord. The link to mine will be in the description below. Make sure that you guys are able to see that so that you can contact me. I would love to be able to um, look at any designs that you have and then potentially make a video about it as well. Any cool new races, new mechanics, new just new cards in general. I'd love to be able to see anything that you guys make. Um, but as always, your thoughts, comments, feedback, questions, all appreciated. Please give those to me in the comments below. I read them all, obviously, and I'd love to be able to see what you guys think about my stuff. So, uh, thank you for watching, and have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next one.